Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Good evening. I hope each one of you are taking a moment to prioritize your mental health, especially as we approach the year and hustle, especially where we all just running on adrenaline after a long year. My name is Faeeza Lok. I am a proud member of the National Leadership Collective at Rise in Zanzi. As a citizen led, citizen centered political movement gearing up for the 2024 election, our vision is quite crystal clear. Our vision is to build a safe, equal, prosperous, and united South Africa in a single generation, a life where we prioritize happiness and dignity. And when we talk about safety in our vision, it goes beyond rhetoric. It means being able to walk alone in the streets without constantly, being having fear and sharing my live location for safety. And really, this really brings us to this pressing issue that we're going to discuss today, which is gender-based violence. And gender-based violence doesn't discriminate. It affects all genders and sexual orientation. It impacts not only the individual, but our economy, our communities, our families, and our overall well-being. And at Rise and Zanzi, our commitment isn't just about acknowledging that there's gender-based violence. It's about diving deep into the intricate roles of government, society, and civil organization in preventing this. And currently, we're running a People's Manifesto consultation process where we basically go and ask people questions on their challenges, their aspirations, their concerns, their solutions to their issues. Because we believe that in order for us to create the South Africa we want, we must learn and grow with people. And today's live session is an extension of that commitment. Really, just trying to engage with Loyiso here, with our guest here, learning and growing together to inform the vision for South Africa. So yesterday we unpacked the role of government in gender-based violence cases, and today we have the privilege of speaking with a guest from Sisonke, a movement that advocates for sex workers. Sisonke really gave birth to other organizations, with which Loyiso will touch on later. Sisonke plays a significant role in combating gender-based violence. At Rise and Zanzi, we practice using an inclusive and intersectional lens to understand issues in its context and that are experience based. And so that's why today we want to shine a light on gender-based violence in sex work with the incredible Loyiso Saliso from PE. She is affectionately known as Lolo. She's an award-winning African feminist, identifying as an intersectional human rights advocate. After almost a decade in the CSO and advocacy field, she's currently the program manager at Sisonke National Movement in Joburg. Welcome, Loyiso.
Thank you so much for having me and inviting me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yes, let's dive into it. So, Loiso, you played a pivotal role in initiating the total shutdown, the hashtag total shutdown movement. And it really, really took South Africa by storm. How did this movement really contribute to awareness around sexual and gender based violence and femicide, especially within the context of sex work? And what were some of the outcomes from the hashtag total shutdown?
So the total shutdown it actually came about at a very crucial time where I believe that civil society and women and children and GNC folk across the country really needed to do something to make sure that they grab the attention of government and raise the awareness loud and clear around the increasing stats which continue to increase today, around gender-based violence and femicide, and specifically violence against women, right? And children and queer people, GNC folk, the vulnerable group, what we call the vulnerable groups, and and femicide as well. So it came at a very pivotal time, and we one of the things that we really demanded, because as a movement, we obviously were collaborating or inclusive in the movement with civil society organizations who we also mobilized with. And after we had handed over the memorandum to the president on the 1st of August 2018, one of our very clear demands when we were at the union buildings was that we're demanding a national gender summit hosted by the presidency. And moving towards the National Gender Summit, we had 5 non-negotiables, which means that we were not willing to negotiate whatsoever. We wanted these things implemented immediately now. And sex work, the decriminalization of sex work was one of the 5 non-negotiable asks for the Gender Summit. So, post to that, we continue to advocate around decriminalization of sex work amongst other demands, 24 demands. And we saw us moving towards now the establishment of the National Strategic Plan. And within the NSP, it was said that even though we said that we're demanding it now, it's non-negotiable, but in the NSP, it was declared that decriminalization of sex work will be implemented in 2024, which is actually next year. We continue to advocate for that and fight for that and engage around decriminalization of sex work as Siskonke, together with our sister organizations and coalition, which is the Asijiki Coalition and SWET. However, we do have concerns, right, around the fact that, we know that every time there's new administration coming in, all the things that were actually at the forefront, which Decrim is one of them, will fall back with the new administration. And next year it's the elections, the year which they're supposed to decriminalize sex work. So that's really one of our biggest concerns now, and why we're actually really pushing hard for the bill to go back to Parliament and be reviewed again, and for us to see decriminalization really come to life in 2024 before the current administration goes out.
Yeah. And so currently, have the presidency respond on their progress of commitment? Because 2024 is around the corner.
So you know how it is, right? It's always like a bit murky there with, government and commitments and all of that, because they always advocate. I mean, the current governing party always advocates for decriminalization of sex work. But I think sometime this year they were sitting in Parliament and it was asked, when the bill was put through the first time, that who is for the decriminalization of sex work. And unfortunately, most of the people in that political party and in Parliament did not really put up their hands for that. So you cannot really use a true struggle and pain of people for your political points, which is such a norm in our country, unfortunately and sadly and tragically. And then when it comes to the time for you to actually walk your talk, then you backtrack. So it's also a matter of, do we really believe they're going to decriminalize? I mean, they have it in their manifesto. I think most political parties have it in their manifestos. But when it comes to Parliament and the bill is put before them, we need them to be consistent in saying, yes, we do agree to decriminalization of sex work. So we are hopeful that, they will push. Currently, the bill has been sent back to us, and we are reviewing it again because apparently we have to ensure that there are regulations in there. However, we cannot regulate when we are still criminalized. It would make sense for us to be decriminalized first and then start regulations. So now we are in a position where we now have to come up with regulations in order for us to see decriminalization. And we're under pressure because of the elections. We would love to see this happening before the new administration comes in.
Yeah. And it just speaks to the kind of leadership and the lack of accountability in government officials. There should be a sense of honor when you say that you are behind something so important. And so, because these are people's lives, right? Sex workers are mothers, they are providers, they are leaders, they are human beings. And so every single day, this doesn't get passed. Every single day, there are conservatives who uses their bias to make a decision. Then we will still be in the same place. And it's definitely something we're definitely calling for a different kind of leader to take ownership of their role. Yes. I want to deep dive onto intersectionality. You know, as an intersectional human rights advocate, could you share some insight on how issues of GBV intersect with other aspects of identity, particularly in the context of sex work? Shine a light on that, please. Give some examples.
Okay, so when it comes to sex work context, right, the intersectionalities, they start off with your gender. Because a lot of people, when they hear sex workers, they think women sex workers, and forget that within sex workers there are MSMs, men who have sex with men. There are straight men who are sex workers, and all kinds of gender unconforming people and different people with different sexualities within this space. So that's the first thing that intersects there. So the violence towards sex workers, and the consistency in criminalizing it, destigmatizing it, and also discriminating, is really on the basis because people think that it's mostly women who are sex workers, for starters. And secondly, we talk about class, right? Because when we talk about sex workers, we always think about the women or the people, sex workers, who stand in the streets, in hotspots, by the trucks, in brothels, downtown, and all of that. And we forget that there are actually sex workers who look like me and you, who work in big buildings, but their sex work is more, it's classier than that of a poor person, poor sex worker, or lower working class sex worker. And also we talk about race. When we talk about sex workers, it has a black face. A black woman's face is the first thing that pops into mind, or a non-white person's face is the first one that pops into mind. And that's why also the violations and the violence towards sex workers is so harsh, because it has a black face. We also talk about religion. Sex workers are now excluded from church. I mean, these are people who believe in God, or whatever religion they believe in, and they somehow find themselves excluded from these spaces where they are supposed to be accepted and honored and protected as well. So these are some of the ones that I can really touch on currently. I know that also in terms of all of these intersectionalities, there's also those dynamics of how they treat you because of these intersectionalities, the healthcare services, right? There are those violations that happen at healthcare facilities. And it doesn't happen in facilities in Sandton, sweetie. It doesn't happen in facilities in the suburbs. It happens in facilities in the townships where we stay in our communities. And also in terms of the police treatment, they don't go into brothels in Sandton or in suburbs, but they will go into brothels downtown, and they will target these women even when they're not on duty during the day. They will go after them and they will target them and harass them and arrest them, on weekends, and make them do horrendous things at police stations, even take the little money that they make, and these things are not experienced by sex workers, who are many, that are white or that are non-black, that are in a certain class, which is an upper class than the poor, who are, just really living their lives, and are more privileged than what I've mentioned currently. So yes, those are the parts that are actually intersecting and affecting sex workers.
Yeah, thank you so much for shining that light, because just to we need to put ourselves in the shoes of the people that we are solving the problem for, and so we need to listen to their experiences. And as you say, sex workers gets abused from both sides, from the clients and the police.
Yes.
And yeah, for as long as this bill is not being passed. So before I get to unpacking the bill and how it actually helps us to create a more a safer, more dignified workplace for sex workers, I have a question coming online from Sadie. She said, "Good evening, ladies. Do you think that decriminalization of sex work has a risk of creating more increase of human trafficking incidents, and could it also increase the STD rates and abortion rates?"
Okay, so first of all, I want to be clear that there already is an act or law in the country that focuses solely on human trafficking. So any human trafficking cases should, when they go through the justice system, they go through their own particular law. However, there is a myth, I would say, that goes around that sex workers or sex work, rather, the industry is enabling human trafficking, which is incorrect. What enables human trafficking is, one, the people who are benefiting from human trafficking, who are not sex workers, for starters. Secondly, it is also the actual criminalization of sex work that allows the elements of human trafficking to creep into the cracks of that criminalization. Because if should it be decriminalized, we will be regulated. There will be certain processes that are legal and otherwise to follow, and therefore it won't be easy for criminal elements to creep in to the sex workers industry. And also, I just want to tap on the STIs and it was STIs and
Abortion.
abortion. So already sex workers are experiencing a very tough time accessing healthcare services due to stigma and discrimination. And to think that, and to even say that people who spread HIV or people who spread STIs or people who are, always out looking for abortion or whatever, it's sex workers, is really an unfair statement, because those are things that are experienced by every single body, regardless of what industry you're in or regardless who you are. It's life experiences that we go through. Unfortunately, I also understand, because of the difficulty for us to, especially women sex workers, to negotiate a condom, and just generally sex workers to negotiate a condom, because STIs are not only like transmitted through the vagina, but those who have sex, MSMs, they also experience STIs through the channels in which they have sex. So it's really not a thing that you can label or put on the shoulders of a certain collective in society. It's a responsibility of everybody to ensure that you use your condoms. You also, you use your condoms, you negotiate your condoms. If you don't want a condom, then listen, we're not going to have sex, because we are living in a country where HIV is still high, still on the increase. And, abortion is still not, like, it is decriminalized. However, access to it is really impossible, and even worse for sex workers. They end up going to the back door abortion services to go get assistance, because they don't have the money at all to go to the other, like, for example, your Marie Stopes, where you have to pay. So there really are challenges. I don't think that to put that on people who are mostly vulnerable, and don't have really much power to negotiate anything for themselves, never mind putting food on the table for their families and themselves, and say that they are responsible for something that actually is contributed to by everybody, male, female, GNC, queer, everybody.
Yeah, 100%. And also HIV, HIV, STDs, abortion rates, these are an education issue. And it's for all, everyone.
Mhm.
So for as long as you have intercourse, you should get to know how to protect yourself. And decriminalizing sex work helps us to better protect, help us to better look into how can we better support and build a safer and more dignified workplace for sex workers. And
Yes.
so I hear what you're saying. Just to confirm, MSM is men to men, right?
Yes, men having sex with men,
Okay, cool.
also known
Um,
as gay men, but they're not always gay, because they are bisexual men, who have sex with men. So it's not always like a certain label, but we all just put them inclusively under MSM because they are men who have sex with men.
okay. Okay, got you. Got you. Great. So I want to find out. So you touch on a little bit on what are the unique challenges that sex workers face, but if you can touch on a little more, some examples of what are the kind of experiences that sex worker would face when it comes to gender-based violence, and how can society not the government yet, just like as society, as your neighbor, as how can we be an ally, how can society address these challenges effectively?
Okay. So there's a lot of violations of constitutional human rights violations. I think it's important to say these are constitutional human rights violations that are not accounted for. And examples I would make is, like I said earlier, the police would harass sex workers. I mean, they sometimes have targets for arrests, for loitering and all of that per month. And when they want to reach those targets, they go out and they target sex workers. And usually do it on Fridays because they know that they're going to keep you over the whole weekend and you'll only come out maybe on Monday, right? But the sad thing is that you harass these sex workers at the hotspots because you know where they are. Sometimes even when you're not on duty, just because they've identified you and know who you are, they will basically harass you while you walk into the shop in your neighborhood or close to where you normally work. And this is unfair. They would keep them at police stations, make them shine their marivas, their boots. They would make them wash the police vehicles. They would make them, perform sexual acts because they have this idea that anyway you are in the industry, so why should I respect your body and your choice or whatever the case may be? And sometimes they take even the little money that they have if they arrest them on duty, which is really unfair. Also, I mentioned about church. A lot of sex workers, I mean, we work in the regionally, so we've worked in Mars, in Zim, everywhere, and we hear the same consistent story around religion. That religion or churches also are one of the biggest perpetrators of violations against sex workers, where they will sometimes preach about sex workers because they know that there is a sex worker in the room, whatever, where they will basically, make you feel uncomfortable within the space and you end up no longer going to church. And also healthcare facilities. If you know that you're a sex worker, already they will just treat you differently. And that's why we find ourselves now with organizations that basically offer services directly to sex workers. So there'll be mobile clinics for sex workers because sex workers are now afraid to go get their HIV treatment at clinics because of how they're treated. They're afraid to go and ask for assistance around STIs, especially MSMs, because sometimes, I mean, reports we've gotten is that nurses don't even want to look at examine them as they should, because they have this whole thing that, they bring their morals and their religious beliefs to their workplaces, which they shouldn't do. And also society at large. I mean, if you're known in your community, there are people who are openly sex workers and are known, but you'll find that in some societies, I mean, neighbors will say that don't hang with that person because they're a sex worker. But I think that one of the most, it's all horrible, but one of the most horrible things is how children of sex workers are discriminated and stigmatized. In school, they are just stigmatized. Parents, I mean, we've had cases where parents have had to go to school to take their children out, because they are victimized. Their parents are sex workers. And people forget that the money that sex workers make, it's like being a construction worker. It's like being an administrator. You do the same things with that money that anybody else can do, like pay for your children's school fees, buy them clothes. So why should this child also bear the brunt of what their parent is doing, to make ends meet? So I feel like society as a whole, police, everybody, before we put these labels on each other, of your profession, of the industry you are in, we need to start focusing on us that we are human beings first. There are parents whose children, and I always like to make this example, right? Just to basically take off the blinker of the ignorance, I would say, that we have a lot of reports or cases around um, young people who are in higher education institutions, in varsities, who are sex workers, who are putting themselves through school with sex worker money. There are parents who, when their children call because they don't have the means, I mean, we have to be realistic. The current state of our economy and our country is really harsh to poor and working class. And so putting your children to school is very difficult. Oh, sorry, my goodness. It's really difficult. And so you find that there's young girls who reach out and call us to say that, listen, we're going through this. Also, we only work with sex workers from 18 and above and not younger. However, we cannot shy away from the responsibility of helping these girls go through the right channels for them to get the assistance, that they need. If they need food, let them get food. We would not like for them to go through sex work, but sometimes you can't control these things. So society has a role to play in terms of just being empathetic, of being understanding, of opening up your mind to learning and understanding that these are human beings. These are your brothers, your sisters, your children. You know that some people are sex workers. You don't even know that the person sitting next to you at home is a sex worker. So it can be anybody that is a sex worker. Respect people. If you're going to fight for human rights against gender-based violence, you can't say I'm fighting for human rights of gender-based of victims that are employed, for example. It needs to be collectively, holistically for everybody. So if we're going to protect women and children, we must protect sex workers as well.
Yeah, very well said. Very, very well said. Um, so let's dive into the decrim bill.
Mhm.
How can the decrim bill actually contribute to the broader fight against GBV? And what role does the movement play in this advocacy? And then lastly, just how can people join?
Okay, so the Decrim Bill, I just want to really give quick background as to where it's been. So it went through to Parliament, and it was viewed, and obviously we have what you call the state law advisors, who basically advise government, on bills that are, brought forth to them in terms of if they align with the constitution, that is. So our bill
Right.
was brought back, right? And as I said, because they're asking us to now put regulations to it, so it can make more sense, it can align to the constitution and so forth. At the moment, we are sitting at the table with Swet Sisonke Asijiki, and we have allies who are with us. And by the way, I know that I spoke about religious leaders and police, but we have very great allies in some police, in SAPS, as well as in Cinderella, in religious leaders who we work with, who advocate with us and stand by us all the time. So, we have legal assistance from pro bono lawyers and organizations which work within the legal space. And now we're basically doing what the government has asked us to do, is basically come up with these regulations. How are they going to work, and what's going to be, how are they not going to violate the constitution as far as labor and everything else is concerned. We are having a meeting with DOJ coming up, sorry, DOJ, with DOJ coming up to talk about how far we are right now. And we are looking forward to ensuring that now the bill is going to be gazetted again. And unlike the last time, there will be enough time for contributions to be made, but also the channels in which contributions can be made. You can't say that contributions to these bills must be made through the post office. It's not even functioning, you know? And secondly, through emails. Sex workers, majority of sex workers who are really fighting for decrim are the ones who are poor, who don't have access to, the luxuries of internet and data. So we also are trying to advocate for more inclusive channels of making these contributions. And with the decriminalization of sex work, like I said, we really need to think about how the myths of human trafficking, child sexual labor is all about sex work industry, which is not. It's really about us being decriminalized in order for us to ensure that the constitutional human rights of sex workers are respected. That when a sex worker goes and reports rape at a police station, it's treated like anybody else reporting rape. That when they report abuse, the cases do actually reach the courts and are not just disappearing, whereby clients are going to come and say whatever. That even cases around serial killers who target sex workers, they move progressively and reach what is the English word that I'm looking for now? Judgment, and they are persecuted. Yes, persecution as well. So these are some of the things that I really want to highlight. I mean, we have something called the four legal model as well. And those four legal models is really us going out to our sex workers on the ground, across the country, and really sensitizing them and raising awareness for them to understand what this decrim is, because we can't be fighting for something that people don't understand what it is. When they have community meetings, they need to go there and advocate for themselves as well. So we're not the voice of the voiceless, we are an enhancer of people who have a voice. So we have to equip them with the tools and information for them to be able to fight for themselves when they are arrested on the spot. So these are some of the things that decrim will bring forth, also through labor. This thing, sex work as an industry will be regulated. We will be able to have unions. We will be able to pay tax. We want to pay tax and be recognized. So all the things that other people who are working in certain industries that are regulated and are criminal and are decriminalized, we want those benefits as well. So yeah, and if people, and what the work that we do as Sisonke is that we really advocate for the human rights of sex workers. We don't provide any services. However, we have partnerships with with many organizations that provide services that we cannot provide, like your counseling, mental health support, and healthcare issues, legal issues. So when you do come to us and you say you have a legal matter and we know that we're not able to assist you, we are able to refer you to our legal partners for assistance and so forth. So we have a membership as well. So we do have members of Sisonke, members across the country. We operate in all 9 provinces. And we have provincial coordinators, we have peers who go into communities, who go into hotspots and sensitize and raise awareness around HIV prevention, treatment intake. They distribute condoms as well as lubricants to sex workers to make sure that even if they do this work under whatever conditions they're doing it under, they have the tools to protect themselves, even if they are little. But with decriminalization, we could actually do far better in actually reaching these sex workers. But I think one more thing before I tell you where to reach us is looking at the stats around the 2030 vision of HIV and AIDS, right? Because it's World AIDS Day today, and I really want to touch on this, is that when we were doing the key populations roundtable discussion where I am right now, the stats around sex workers, around transgender people, and around people who use drugs, in majority of the region, they don't have any data. And that is simply because these people, these K-pops are criminalized. You can't reach people if you don't know where to reach them, if they have to hide, to be who they are, to do the work that they do. You're not going to know what the HIV data is around them. And you won't be able to reach them, to educate them, sensitize them around HIV, to reach them, to have to get testing, to get treatment, and to get prevention methods. So these are some of the things that really that criminalization hinders us from achieving as well. So to reach us, please go on to we are available on Facebook as Sisonke_ZA. We're also available on Instagram, also as Sisonke, I think it's Sisonke_ZA or Sisonke National Movement, you'll find it. Also, we're available on LinkedIn. You can also reach out to me on my DMs if there's anything. If you're a sex worker and you need to find a safe home, we also work with migrant sex workers. So we're not exclusive of anybody. We are very intersectional in that sense. If you need any help, if you need a home as a sex worker where you can get assistance with any troubles you are facing, please do DM myself, go into the page, follow the pages or the groups and DM them. Our media and comms lady will always respond to Yonela and you will get the help that you need. But you can also come to our offices if you want to downtown, but we rather advise that you actually DM us first before we can invite you in. And we will notify you when we have membership drives and who our peer educators in your region where you are that you can reach out to that can help you immediately with any services and with any assistance. Sorry.
Lovely. Thank you so much. I really like the fact that you guys have such a sustainable and long-term way of looking things. You know that the sex workers need skills and need to know their rights when when they are in these vulnerable conditions, like being arrested. And so, for as long as the sex work are criminalized, because sex workers will just work in more under more vulnerable conditions, because sex
Yes.
works don't just end. Sex workers just work and more underground, because we know it's around us. But we need to make sure that this is the first step,
Yes.
first of many steps for us to actually start creating a more safe and an inclusive industry like the sex industry. The sex industry is like an $800 billion industry, and I think
Yes.
that if once this is decriminalized, the next step has to be formalizing the sex industry. Japan, Amsterdam are really good examples of that. It can really contribute to our economy and our GDP.
Absolutely.
As you say, like sex workers want to pay tax. They want to, this is another job in society that brings dignity,
Mhm.
and brings you the life that you want. Oh, and I want to touch on one last thing. Was that you mentioned that you're not voiceless. Sex workers are not voiceless, and it's true. You you do not need even a politic. Well, the world we're trying to create is that you don't need a political party to be your voice. You have a
Yes.
voice. You're just being ignored, and that is the
Mhm.
difference here. So I want to touch on your experience because you
Mhm.
have shared that you have experienced gender-based violence yourself. Can you
Mhm.
shine the light on the support systems or the importance of the support system for survivors and how organization like yours actually empower of those who are affected by the sex work community and the and the abuse that comes in it. How does Sisonke or ICGG and Sweat come together and actually give the counseling or the support that sex workers need?
So, with my experience, I'm a gender-based violence conqueror, and it took me 11 years to speak out. So when people come for survivors and like, why are you only speaking out now? I'm like, it's really up to you to be ready to talk about it because of all the mental and psychological effects that GBV has you believing and convincing yourself of. So in terms of like the systems, honestly, I'm privileged, right, to a certain extent because I'm employed. I'm a Black woman, yes, but I'm employed, and I live I live in a suburb, and all of those other intersectionalities. So even with me, right, getting the service from the justice system, from the police, was difficult, right? There was no justice for me when I needed justice from the police. My case was basically swept under the carpet, and my perpetrator continued to abuse the woman who followed in his life. And that's what happens when the system does not work for us. Is that it enables perpetrators to continue this, being perpetrators and victimizing more women and creating a society of scarred women from GBVF. And as far as Sweat and Sisonke are concerned, and I'll speak on Sisonke mainly, is that we do have an in-house counselor who does assist, sex workers with cases. She does it on a basic basis. However, as I said, we have other more professional and qualified service providers, so we would always refer then when the case is very dire to them. Our peer educators do amazing work because the work that they deal with out there is really, really, really hard for them. It's very difficult. And they are able to go and assist sex workers when they are being ignored at police stations. They would get up and go and in the middle of the night, and they will go and assist somebody at a police station with reporting a case of GBV because they are ignored because of they are a sex worker and they were abused by a client. So our peer educators do that much. Also, we do have moments. I know that for now, for example, next week we're going to the Eastern Cape to go and talk to sex workers in the Eastern Cape. And one of the things that we're going to be focusing on is GBV. And hearing the stories, the lived experiences of these sex workers, how are they abused, right? In the home, in society, like across board. And we're also going to sensitize them around their constitutional human rights as well. Because yes, we'll have peers to help you, but at some point you also need to be able to advocate for yourself and you become an advocate for your own freedom, for your own liberation. And that's the tools that we want to equip sex workers with as well. So that's the best that we can do right now. But also, criminalization, once again, it limits us from doing so much more work that could help empower sex workers, unlike we would be able to do if it was decriminalized.
Hmm. Thank you so much for the work that you do. I just have one last question,
Mhm,
which is to highlight the role of community involvement in challenging stigmas, mindset, dispelling myths, and creating a more supportive environment for sex workers. How can someone, how important is community as civil society, as someone's neighbor, you know, to play in this system
Mhm.
of making sex workers, supporting more than the work and the environment of a sex worker.
So first of all, I think as civil society, my constant preaching is that we work too much in silos, and we need to become each other's allies. The lives of sex workers, these are key populations, which means that they're most vulnerable in our society. Their issues intersect, right? A sex worker will go through the most because they are a sex worker, but also go through the most because they are a queer sex worker and they are queer NGOs. They will also go through the most because they are living with HIV. They are HIV CSOs. They will also go through the most because they are differently abled and they are organizations for differently abled people. So what we need to do is to really work together and become each other's allies, because the people that we help, their lives intersect. That's the first point that we need to start working on in order for us to be more impact, to make more impact in the lives of the people that we actually advocate for and work for the liberation for. But also, you know, I was thinking about something else. So it's really a matter of civil societies really working together when it comes to sex workers, understanding that they're just not only sex workers, but their lives intersect. Secondly, when it comes to community at large, um, we want to continue having allies that are religious leaders. We have a good relationship with Cinderella right now. They invite us to conversations, they invite churches and some priests, and they listen, you know, and they are attentive. And we approach them from the point of the Bible, of the Quran, that God loves us all. So who are you to not love us? We are all human beings. You cannot tell, you know, if the person walking into church in your choir is a sex worker, and yet they are. But when you preach about sex work and you are violent towards it, you make them feel unwelcomed in the house of the Lord or whatever religion it is. So they understand the message, and now they want to help sex workers. We have mothers in the church who have reached out to us to say, listen, we're having events. Please invite sex workers to come and join these events. We have women in the church who open up kitchens next to hotspots that they know of and provide women with clothes and sex workers with clothes and soup kitchens through the work that we do and the collaborations that we have. So, and I feel that society needs to understand, if we can tap into the hearts and just the essence of religion, which is one of the biggest contributions to violations in society at large, surely we can get to the hearts of individuals in our communities, you know. Treat the sex worker's child as your own child. I think we really have to tap back to the essence of who we are, which is Ubuntu, you know. Sex work, as you said, is a very rich industry across the world. It is also one of the oldest industries in the world. It was in the Bible. So why are we still in 2023 talking about discriminating against these people? Why are we talking about violating their human rights? We need to do better in respecting each other and really supporting each other for a better future. And we cannot have a better future. We cannot want a better future if we're not contributing to it being better. And that also starts with us respecting each other's human rights. So let's advocate for each other. Let's help each other out. If a child is suffering and their mom is not there, help them out. You know, she has to go and work so that she can come back and put food on the table. I know of sex workers who have built homes for their families. I know of sex workers who have taken their siblings through school and tertiary. I know of people who are in the SEPs industry, who are in corporate, who will tell you that, listen, it is my mom or my sister who took me through school to be where I am because of sex worker money. So we really need to understand that sex workers are human beings in every aspect, and we need to honor them. Sex work is work. Sex work is honest work, and people benefit as well. Families benefit from the process of sex work. So who are we to then discriminate against them because of the work that they do? We need to stop
Yeah.
doing that.
Exactly. And I find that that this is actually a conversation on, focusing on a decolonial agenda, because these
Yes,
laws these laws are put in like during, apartheid time, according
absolutely.
to their own bias because of, Christianity, religion, patriarchy, all of that, during that time. And we
Yes,
have not things have not changed since then.
absolutely.
We really need leaders who truly understands, who truly listens
Mhm.
to the most vulnerable and marginalized community
Mhm.
on the challenges that they face, because these are our communities. For as long as on an individual level we're not okay, your community won't be okay. Your community
Yes.
won't be okay. South Africa won't be okay. This is why we're such a traumatized country. It's because we
Mhm.
don't we don't take care of each other. As you say, we don't practice Ubuntu um, and build strong communities. And strong communities talk to each other. It really
Yes.
starts with having a conversation like this, talking to each other, and literally asking each other, you know, what are the things that triggers you? What are the things that you're going through?
Can I just quickly say something? Like you really touched on something when you said it's all about decolonization, because it's the first thing that I said when I first engaged religious leaders. I was like, I feel like you are decolonizing religion right now by going against what it preaches and what it's been known of. You are saying, you know what? We know that you've been saying that, but we don't want to believe that anymore. We want to treat everybody as a child of God. So I feel that people also need to understand that these things of putting labels and these industries, all good and well, they are there, right? But the more and the system, it's the systems that actually enable us to be oppressed as a people, to be oppressed as a continent at large, as a country, as a gender. So we really need to understand that if we continue to perpetuate discrimination and stigma against sex workers, against people living with HIV, against queer people, against all key populations or vulnerable groups, we are contributing to enabling those systems that oppress all of us, all of us. And we need to start decolonizing those systems by being kinder, by going back to the essence of who we are, because things worked so well back then. Even if they were backward, we would say that right now because we have technology, we can put on makeup, we can engage like this. But as far as the essence of society and communities are concerned, in families and households, we were surviving and thriving. And we need to tap back into that and decolonize the system. And that starts with us respecting and loving and being kind to each other, regardless of what labels the system has come up with to put on us to further divide us.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Loyiso, and the incredible work that Sweat, SCGK, and as well as Sisonke are doing. Thank you for sharing your valuable insights, your story. Thank you for giving us your time, and thank you everyone for tuning in um, on a Friday night. We really, really appreciate it. This is Faeeza Lok from Rise and Zanzi. If you want to get involved, please visit our link in bio to sign up. Let's not just be observers. Let's be active participant in our democracy. Democracy means we need to get involved.
Yes.
And creating a more inclusive and equitable world is a responsibility we all share. So let's rise for women, let's rise for children, and let's rise for the LGBTQAI plus community.
Mhm.
Have a wonderful evening. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.